Hello everyone and welcome to this week's ExtendScript tutorial. In this one I'm going to show you how to make a music chord generator for After Effects. Now previously we made a script called Random Note Generator where it has an object full of different notes at the different hertzes and then it applies random notes to the generate tones effect inside of After Effects. This script is going to take it to the next level, and instead of just generating notes, it's going to generate a whole array of chords instead of a note for every layer. So let's go ahead and have a listen. So you can see if we go into the effect control, we have a tone applied and then 3 frequencies on channels 1, 2, and 3. And of course, just like the note generator we had, we'll have control over whether it's a sine, a triangle, or any of that. So each one of these layers that it generates is going to have a tones applied to it. The notes will start to combine if you don't cut them off properly, like this. But for the most part, everything should be fine if you just separate them into their own areas. So what we're going to do today is take this old script and convert it into what it is now. So I'll create a new JavaScript file and zoom in a little bit and then just copy and paste all of the code from our random note generator, which will be linked in the description down below. And what we're going to do is essentially go ahead and change this from an object into an array. The reason we want to do this is because we're going to be looping through it, and then we're going to need to say grab the note that you've randomized and then grab 2 notes next to it and then a couple more notes. And the reason we're going to do that is basically we're going to have 2 options, a minor or a major. It's going to generate either minor chords or major chords based on the pattern of how they appear on a keyboard. You have your base note or 0, and then for a minor chord you have 3 notes up from the original or 3 steps up from the original, and then 7 for the next note. So it's basically going to use the indices of an array to get which notes are in the particular chord it's going to generate. So instead of using an object like we have in the original example, we need to convert this to just an array. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste what I have from the new script and say notes is equal to this array of numbers here. Now I've only taken a small sample of the numbers because a lot of the frequencies that this can generate up to 3,000, 5,000 hertz, or some of the lower frequencies like 30 and 20, they're not going to sound very good in chord form. So we're going to stick to sort of the middle area of a keyboard with these notes here, 155 up to about 880 hertz. So you can actually customize all the notes it's going to randomize between. You could even select just a smaller low section and then a smaller high section of the keyboard, and then it will randomize based on that. So the majority of the things are going to stay the same in the script, but we're going to be really going into our pick random property function here, where instead of just picking a random property of the object we're bringing in, we're going to pick a random index of the array full of these notes. So let's say it picks 440, that's an A, and then it will randomize, pick that note, and then what we need to now have is that array for the minor and major. We're going to change our pick random property because we no longer have an object of notes, we have an array. So we'll just say notes array. And now to make sure it's updated, I'm going to look for any time we call pick random property. And it looks like it's fine the way it is. We're just going to make sure it's called the notes array, and since it's not an object anymore. And now instead of down here having a random, basically what we're going to do instead is get rid of the for loop. And I'm just going to clean up the code a little bit here. And now I'm going to create a variable called minor array. And I'm going to also create one below it called major array. And like I explained, these are going to be representative of the sort of steps it takes to create these chords. So a minor starts with your base note or 0, then you go 3 steps up and then 7 steps up. A major is 0, 4, 7, and there's all sorts of these patterns for different types of chords and patterns inside of music. Now in order to pick one of these, we're actually just going to make that an argument inside of here. So we'll just call this the minor bool, or we can call it the major bool since major is much more common. And if major bool is equal to true, then we want the major array, and if it's false, we want the minor array. So let's just write a note to say that. So if the major bool is equal to true, use the major array. Then down below, we can make sure we have, let's actually create a sort of key array. This is going to be an empty array, and whatever the key is going to be in, if they've selected major or minor, that's what it's going to be set to. So if our major bool is true, our key array is going to be equal to our major array. If it's not true, we know it's our minor array. So we're going to set key array equal to our minor array. So now our key array will be basically containing one of these two depending on which argument we give it. Speaking of the argument we give it, up here when we call it, we need to give it our notes as well as true or false. So let's go ahead and give it false so that we get minor chords. Then I'm going to go ahead and make a random integer variable. It's called random int. And this is going to be randomized between 0 and the length of this entire notes array. So in order to do that, I'm just going to say math.rand. That's a method, so we need to put parentheses. And that needs to be multiplied by the max that we want it to be. The maximum is going to be the length of our notes. We want to randomize the index between 0 and however many there are. So we're going to grab notes.length. And then to end this all, to make sure we don't get a decimal, I'm going to say math.floor and enclose that inside of there. So now our random int will basically give us a random index of any one of these inside of our notes. It might give us this one, and then it might give us this one. And then basically what we need to do is apply our new minor or major key array to go, this is our 0th note. Now we need to go 3 forward. 1, 2, 3. This is the next one we need to select. Then we need to go to the 6th. So then it would be 5, 6. So then we need to basically take those 3 values and return them as an array representative of our chord. So inside of this for loop that creates the 20 or however many you specify audio layers with this tones effect on it, basically what we want to do is create a variable outside of it. We'll call this the chord array, and it's going to be an empty array, and it's going to then contain 3 different notes. So what we're going to do is every time we run through and create a new layer, our chord array is going to be equal to something. Then we're going to take our pick random property code down here and paste it, and we're going to now need to return the array of 3 values. And then our change tone here, we just need to give it, remember, our frequency 1, frequency 2, frequency 3. Instead, what we're going to do is give it our chord array, first value, chord array, second value, and chord array, third value. That way we get the first frequency, the second frequency, and the third frequency of the chord, and then they'll all be applied to the proper frequencies down here. And since this doesn't really make any sense anymore to say pick random property because they're not properties in an object, we're just going to say generate chord and then change the name down here to generate chord. So now we can go ahead and go back into our generate chord function where we have our random int or index, which represents a random note inside of our array. And now what we're going to do is basically return the rest of the notes. In order to do this, under return, I'm going to say inside of brackets, again, we need our base note, the next note, and the third note. So our base note is going to be equal to our notes array, which we also need to update right here. It's going to be equal to our notes array with our random int, which is going to be, again, just a random frequency value. It could be 440, 283. That's representative of these different notes. And then for the other two, we just need to add whatever our key array is. So instead of just random int, we need to add our key array, and for the first value it needs to be index 1, and then for the other one it's going to be our notes array random int plus key array index 2. So what it's going to do is return the first random note we get, then it's going to return the random note plus either 3 or 4 if it's a minor or major, and then the third one it's going to return is the random int plus the second value of our key array, which is either 7 or 7. We could change it up and make it a little bit different, but this is basically how the 3-note array would work. So hopefully that wasn't too complicated. Let's go ahead and run the script and see how it's working. Make sure we're connected to After Effects and press run. Of course, I need to spell out math.random, and let's try that again. So I'm getting an error when I try and set frequency 3. I think that the reason this might be is because it could be picking, say, what if it picked 880? If it then tries to push up the index by saying plus 1 or 2 or 3, there's no index higher than that. So what we need to do is only apply the frequency if the frequency is valid. So what I'm going to say is if frequency 1, then we'll apply frequency 1. And what this is checking is basically, if the variable exists or if it's not null, if it's been assigned an actual meaningful value, then we want to use that value. Otherwise, it won't do anything. So we're going to do this for each one of the frequencies, even though we only have 3 of them that are being brought in as arguments. And that should be good. Let's go ahead and try and run this again. And now we've got 20 generated layers. Let's go ahead and have a listen. You can see it's generated nice minor sounding chords. We can scrub through and listen to other ones. And again, you can just keep generating these over and over and getting different results. So that's one example of how you can adjust it to make chords work. Of course, you can add it to include 5 notes, since there are already 5 frequency arguments available. And another thing is, don't forget you can change the type of tones. So if we wanted to change the type of tone to something else, you can change the argument for tone. And then once we generate it, we'll get some different notes. And of course, you can change the false bool inside of generate chords to be true to include major chords, which will be slightly more positive sounding. And then lastly, you can change the actual arrays themselves down here. Maybe you want to make something a little more extreme, like this. And now when we try the major, sounds a lot different, and it's just going to give us a different sound. And if we try the new minor, obviously not necessarily the best example. In that case, I just set it to random notes ahead of it. You can use the same formula to permute notes or chords from a piano over into scripting in After Effects. So that's going to do it for this week's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and hit subscribe to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly. Of course, you can check out the source code for this and the previous script we modified down in the description below. And of course, there you can follow us on Instagram as well. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.